Hey everybody, Ryan here at eTrailer.com. Today on our 2016 Ford F-250 Super Duty, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Curt custom fifth wheel installation kit. Now these are going to allow us to install a fifth wheel. They're built to last from a very solid construction, and they're going to require less drilling than universal kits. Now what's nice about these is when you're not using a fifth wheel, you can take it out. And these are going to be the only thing that's left. And as you can see, they don't stick up real high or take up a whole lot of space in the bed. Another solid design is going to put your mind at ease knowing that you're going to be safely traveling with your fifth wheel as you go down the road. So now you can be the person who has the truck and the tools to haul a trailer for maybe work or for even play. Now one of the hardest parts about picking a kit out is that there's so many different options available on the market. Well, these are nice because they're custom fit specifically for your application. So whether you're experienced or new to fifth wheel towing, these are going to be a good choice because you know they're going to work for your truck. Now one of the things you have to pay attention to when you're towing a fifth wheel trailer is when you're going around really tight turns, you're going to want to make sure that your trailer doesn't make contact with the cab of your truck. Now one of the things to combat that is to get a slider hitch. Now the Curt slider hitch is what I personally would recommend, and it is compatible with our installation kit. And one of the things I'd recommend to top everything off is some fifth wheel wiring. Now that would typically go in this area here. That's where your plug would be, and that would eliminate the need to have to droop any wiring over your tailgate. And some of the other compatible hitches that'll work with our setup is the Draw Tight, the Hidden Hitch, Husky, Reese, and Valley. Now all of our components, including our brackets, are going to have a carbide black finish, which will help keep everything looking good. And since everything is custom fit to your truck, installation is going to take about half the time over a universal kit. Speaking of installation, let's go ahead and do it together now. To begin our installation, we're first going to have to take a few measurements. Now we're going to measure from the end of our bed, not the tailgate, so you put your tailgate down and measure from the end of your bed, up here a little bit past the center of our bed. There you're going to find that measurement in your instructions. Now what I also like to do while I'm up here is find the center of our bed, so you can measure from side to side and put a dot where the center is. Now you can do this a few different ways, but how I do it, once I have verified the center and the length and have it marked, I actually take my rail and I measure that and find the center of my rail and put a mark there as well. So once we have all that done, we can align all of our marks and measure it one more time just to make sure that we're spot on. So I'm going to measure from this side to the edge of our rail and make sure that distance is the same as this side over here. And then I also like to measure from the end of our bed to the top and maybe one or two spots to make sure it is exactly straight across. Now once we verified our rail is in the correct position, we're going to take a marker and in the center of these outside holes, put a dot. We're going to do that on both sides. And then this hole in the center that's closest to the back of the truck. Now once we have that done, we can take a center punch and a hammer, and we're going to make a small indention in all of our spots that we marked. Now what we're going to do is put our side plate onto the frame and make sure that our hole lines up. Now these are side specific, and so the side that has one tab, that's going to face the front of the truck, and the tabs are going to face outward towards you. So what we're going to do is kind of put this in place. Just hold it up. What we're wanting to do is verify that the indention we made with our punch is going to be lined up as close to the center of that hole as possible. And as you can see, we're spot on this side. We're going to do the same thing to the passenger side. Once you verified it, you can take your plate down and just set it to the side for now. We'll just kind of push this out of the way. And then I'm going to drill a pilot hole in all 5 of the marks that we made. Now before you drill, it's a good idea to look underneath your truck and make sure you're not going to drill into anything important. Now we can enlarge our holes to the size specified in our instructions. Now I'm going to use a stepper bit, and that'll just make it a little bit easier to get drilled through. Now I'm just going to vacuum up all of our metal shavings to keep them out of the way. And it's always a good idea to use a little spray paint to get some protection over the bare metal that's exposed. Now we're underneath the truck on the passenger side, and we're going to put our hardware in place. That way we can bolt on our side plates. Now we're going to have 2 holes that we're going to put our hardware through, and our hardware is going to be an 1.5 inch carriage bolt and the spacer block that looks like this. Now the 2 holes that we need to use, one of them is right here, right behind our shock absorber. So we'll just take our bolt and spacer and push it through. And the other hole is going to be right here, maybe about 6 to 8 inches away from our bump stop jounce bumper. So we'll use that same hardware and push it through. As you can see back on the outside of the truck, this is where our bolts are exposed. Now if your truck happens to have this little plastic rivet in the frame, we will have to push that in so our plate will sit flush. And to do that, it's really easy. You just kind of grab these 2 tabs on the side and squeeze, kind of just push in like that. And with that out of the way, we can put our plate on. You want to be really careful when you're doing this because you don't want to push the bolts back in. So line it up. And what you can do is take one of the flange nuts and just get it on hand tight over each one. And now we can move over to the driver's side. Now for the driver's side, it's going to be a little bit different, especially if you have a diesel model. If your truck's a diesel, you're actually going to have to use a fish wire technique to get your hardware into place for this hole that is closest to the front of the truck. So what you're going to do is take the included fish wire and the end that is coiled, you're just going to push it through. And it'll come out on top of your DEF tank. And then what you're going to do is take your carriage bolt and your spacer block, the same setup that we used on the other side, and thread that carriage bolt into the coiled end of our fish wire. Then we're going to go to the outside of the frame rail and pull that other end of the fish wire. And that'll pull that bolt into position on our frame rail. And for the other hole, all we're going to have to do is take our spacer block and our carriage bolt and just feed it through. And just a quick tech tip, if you don't want to chance your bolts falling back through whenever you go to put your side plates on, what you can do is just take a piece of tape, kind of just tape it over the head of your bolt into the frame, and that'll help keep it in place. Now we can take our side plate, we're going to leave our fish wire on that bolt, but we're going to take the end of it and slide it through the corresponding hole. And push it up against our frame. Hold it there, and once again take a flange nut and run them down hand tight. To get this fish wire off, you can just unthread it and pop your nut on. So now we can slide our rail in the bed here back into position and line our holes up, and then drop in our longer carriage bolts. Now to fill up the open area in between our side plate and the corrugation in our bed, we're going to be using this U-shaped spacer block. And how this is going to work is it's going to slide in like this, and it's going to go above this hat channel and underneath the bed and the corrugation and around the bolt. Now some of these can be a little tight, so you might have to tap it in with a hammer or a punch, and you might even have to kind of move your bolt around a little bit too to get it to fit around. Now it's like that for all 4 bolts on each side. The center bolt is going to be a little bit different. You're going to want to take your U-shaped spacer block and put it facing this way, or the front and back of the truck. Slide it in that hat channel, just like that. And then you're going to take a spacer block that looks like this and put it up and over everything like that. And then we'll take a flange nut and run it down hand tight. And once you have all your U-shaped spacer blocks inserted, we can secure it down. Now for the sides, on each side we're going to use a spacer block and a flange nut. And we'll get them all hand tight. Now since our front rail has all the hardware in it and is all hand tight and secured, what I went ahead and did is you're going to take your 5th wheel and set it down on top of that front rail. And you're going to kind of hold the back of it up and slide in the rear cross rail. Now what you're going to do is once again measure from side to side, just like we did the front, and make sure that distance is the same on both sides. And then what I did as well was measure from one side to the end of the bed and the other side to the end of the bed, and make sure that number is same too. Now once you've found that measurement and you know this is centered correctly, what you're going to do is mark your holes just like we did the front. We have the 2 very outside holes and the center hole that is closest to the end of the bed. So once you got them marked, you can take your punch, make your indentions in the bed, go underneath, make sure you're not going to drill into anything, and come back and drill all your pilot holes. With all of our pilot holes drilled, what we can do is slide our back rail out of the way, and then enlarge all 5 of our holes to the size specified in the instructions. Now I'm going to vacuum my mess up. And once again, I'll spray some paint over the bare metal just to help keep it protected. Now we can put our cross plate back into place. Now I'm just going to drop my carriage bolts down into place. And keep in mind, this is the same hardware that we used on the first rail. Now we're going to put in all of our U-shaped spacer blocks. Now it's going to be the exact same way that we did the front rail. And once you have all of your U-shaped spacers in place, we're going to secure everything with the same style of hardware that we used on our front rail. Now once all that is hand tight, we're going to have to put these large bolts through the center of our frame and the center of our side plate. Like I said, we're going to take this large bolt and put on the corresponding spacer that fits it. We're going to go from the inside of the frame, run it through, and then we're going to secure it with a large flange nut. And And we're going to do that same process over on the other side. Now with all of our hardware installed, we can snug it all down. Now we're going to start with the hardware that is holding our rails in the bed to our brackets. And don't forget about your bolts in the center of the bed. And now we're going to snug down our smaller bolts that hold our side plate to the frame. And then lastly, we'll do our very large bolt. Now we can use a torque wrench to torque all of our hardware down to the proper specification. Now we're going to torque everything down in that same order that we snugged it down. Now you can find all your torque specs and your instructions. And now with all of our hardware completely torqued on the spec, you're ready to put on your favorite fifth wheel and hit the road. And that'll do it for our look at and installation of the Curt Custom Fifth Wheel Installation Kit on our 2016 Ford F-250 Super Duty.